Hey, morning. I just wanted to talk about a single book today that I read last night. Um, and it's a book that's well, some comic books really affects you. They really touch you and they really go in and sort of change who you are. Um, and for me, I think it was, what's her name? Jeanette Kahn, who was the head of the DC in the late 80s. And she did some very cool things. Karen Bircher as well, with Vertigo. There were they did this new thing called New Format, and it was really cool. Um, there were three series that I bought. I had a limited budget back then. I was 15 years old, um, but I bought Hellblazer, The Question, and Green Arrow from that series. I bought mostly Marvel, other than that, but that was my first three. That was my first foray into DC Comics, and I loved it. Now, the one that I'm talking about today, they're all three of them touched me as a person, you can say. And I have different experiences with all three of them. Probably the question the most, I would say. Hellblazer, well, also sort of very much. But the question was very philosophical and it was very dark. They were all very dark, and I like that. Especially when you're a teenager and you're used to all this goofy, fun, easy movies, books, comics, and then suddenly something darker comes along, um, and it really grips you, fascinates you. This is not a 9.8 copy, and it's not about that at all. Because I read this, and I'll read it again, and I'll flick through it. So if you're one of those people who can't stand to see a comic book being opened and read, and you just want it encapsulated and hung on the wall and never to be touched again, don't watch this. My voice is a little bit. I was very cold last night. This is Green Arrow. This is number two. I have number one as well, but it's in storage. Um, I've had the whole series. Then I lent it to someone, and it's gone now. So I have to buy it all again, which is a drag. But I did that with a lot of my comic books. I don't have that many friends, so I don't know who has the series. but, uh, or maybe I moved so many times in my life. My life has been very chaotic, especially when I was younger. Now it still is. Um, but I moved many times, so it's probably got lost somewhere in a box. Anyway, Green Arrow, new format. That's the thing. That's the whole deal here. This little thing here. And suggested for mature readers. That means that this is not for kids. Is it for adults? No, but it's for mature readers. And I was 15 years old and I was getting more mature. I was searching for something different. And I found this. Actually, I remember seeing the ad for number one, and I bought it and I wrote a letter and they sent me a poster. Um, I was so overwhelmed by the first one. I hadn't read The Longbow Hunters or The Longbow Hunter. Mike Grell did a three-issue prestige format um, about Green Arrow and Black Canary, and she gets captured and tortured, and he ends up killing the people. Well, spoiler, but you know, um, and she's very traumatized from the experience. And she is all through this book. That's what I really love about this book is that Mike Grell takes everything he does serious. Everything that happens in the books affects the characters in the book going forward also. not just now, not just in the moment, not just because it suits him or a political agenda or something like that at that moment. No, it affects the character. And I think Mike Grell worked as an artist on Green Lantern, Green Arrow when Dennis O'Neil was a writer, and I think he fell in love with Green Arrow back then. You can sort of see it in his artwork back then that he likes Green Arrow a lot more than he likes Green Lantern. He's a more interesting character actually. So so he takes that love and he carries it with him in his heart, Mike Grell. And then he writes this Longbow Hunter Prestige Formage thing. And it publishes and it's a hit. And he does something different to Oliver Queen, to Green Arrow. He matures him, not just age-wise, but psychologically as well. He takes the trick arrows and throws them away, and he has real arrows. He hurts people. He's still an amazing shot, but it's not goofy anymore. It's not fun anymore. But what he does, and what I really like about it, is that the character that Dennis O'Neil especially builds up, especially in the Neal Adams Dennis O'Neil run. But even before that, no, that's after. Yeah, the character that Dennis O'Neil and Neal Adams build up in the Traveling Warriors, I think it's called that, something like that. The Green Lantern, Green Arrow run with Dennis O'Neil and Neal Adams. That character, he takes that character and he says, all right, this is comic book lore now. This is the ground rules for this character. He's been building, and I like it. I'm maturing him, but I'm maturing him even more. But he's still the same character. And what I like about him is that he's suddenly complicated. He feels like a human being because he's a leftist. Still, he has the same beliefs because he doesn't change the character. He doesn't make him wants to be he's not like a gender swapping him or anything. He takes Oliver Queen with all his left-leaning view of life, and he says this is the experiences that he had, and he's maturing. He still fights crime, but he's not gentle about it anymore. This is not ha 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 crime. This is real life crime. It's set in Seattle. So he's doing that as well. Before that, all the DC books were set in fake cities like Metropolis or Gotham or Star City, and he he takes that Grell and he says, "Fuck it, I'll put it in a real city. I want it to be real. I want it to feel real. I want people to feel this." Mike Grell is a great artist. Great artist. He's a fantastic artist. He does a lot of great art through his life. Here he chooses to focus on the writing. So he needs to find an artist that can take over the reins, carry on his vision that he started with the Longbow Hunter, and and sustain that vision. Because this is a comic book. It's not just words, there are pictures as well. So he chooses, I don't know why. I'd love to hear that story. So probably some of you know why. He chooses Ed Hannigan. Now, Ed Hannigan's work I've seen before. I can't remember where. I wasn't impressed. It might have been The Inger. But here, Ed Hannigan gets to do the art himself. And it's absolutely fantastic. This could have been in black and white, and it would have been amazing. And here we see he's not playing around. So Mike Grell takes and Ed Hannigan takes the character of Green Arrow and matures him. With every year passing in real time, like every 12 issues, sorry, it's Oliver Queen's birthday, and he ages 1 year. I like that as well, because it becomes real in a sort of way. It becomes people do that, people age, people get older, and we follow him through that in real time. I think it's a stroke of genius from Mike Grell, and also from the editor. Who's the editor here? Mike Gold. Um, oh, it's actually Dick Giordano who's doing the ink with Frank McLaughlin. Um, I think, like, is Dick also Dick Giordano? He's also the editor in chief on this. I don't know. I mean, Jeanette Kahn and Karen Bircher, this is their time. Um, as you can hear from the name, they're both women, but I don't think that had anything to do with them. I don't want to focus on the fact that there were women. I want to focus on the fact that there were really, really, really good people, good at what they were doing. They could see talent and they could take it for what it was and drive it in the right direction. Leaning a little bit, steering, you can say, the talent in the right direction. And that's what an editor is supposed to do. Not just, giving them, woo, you can do whatever you want to do as long as it's. No, they were like telling them what to do, but giving them freedom as well. Mike Grell had a lot of freedom creating this. And it was very different from DC. That's why it was the new format suggested for mature readers. As you can see here, like, it's real, right? They're not playing. The violence is real, the blood is real, and the characters are real, and that's probably the most important part. And I felt that was true for this one, The Question, and Hellblazer. All of them. The characters were real. They felt very real. They felt like people who existed, even though The Question was in Hub City. But the person he was a real person. And it was because it was darker than the usual DC. It was darker than the usual comic books. It wasn't Marvel's, light fun and games. It wasn't the heavy DC old stuff. It was something new, and it was dark, and it was daring. You can say it was like Frank Miller's Daredevil, but without them. And I love Frank Miller's Daredevil. I think it's probably the best comic book ever. But without the big, heavy Miller hand on it, and it still worked. That's the powerful and beautiful thing of this, is that it still worked even though Miller wasn't in it. And it wasn't a copy of Frank Miller's previous work, but he probably paved the way for this to be a thing. And it wasn't like Marvel did something later in the 90s that they called Max, which was just what that lacked, and I think that was the again, I'm going back to Jeanette Berger and Karen Berger and Jeanette Kahn, Dick Giordano, Mike Gold, all these people. What they did was that they allowed this to happen. It was like they planted the seeds and they let the the creative people work, and they wanted something for mature readers, which they should do again. Actually, um, I think that would work really well. Um, but this is not like it's set outside continuity, but it's still in continuity, which is a bit odd. I think Batman is in one of these. He's in the first issue of the Question, or the second issue. He's not in Hellblazers. Well, he is probably later on. Um, Batman is probably the most grounded DC character, right? Because he's a man. He's not a Martian or an alien or from the future or the past, or he's just a man who plays with toys. Um, Look at this cover. That's a poster image in itself. Blood in the water. Him being on the prowl, following the lead. It's by it's Mike Grell. It's a Mike Grell cover. Yeah, it's beautiful. But I think Ed Hannigan grew with the task. I think he matured a lot. And I think he understood the character as well. And that's very important, to understand what you're doing and to be on the same page as the writer. I've talked about this early on about people who cooperate. And doing something like this is really a cooperation between two people very closely. You have to understand what the other people is doing. Like, this is an odd example, but I was reading about Frank Cho, and who's a very, I like him as an artist, and I like him as I don't know him, but what I know as a human being. And he was doing covers for Wonder Woman, and the guy writing Wonder Woman didn't like that the cover were sexy. That's what Frank Cho does, and it sells. And Frank Cho stopped doing them because he didn't want to argue with the writer all the time about why his covers were so sexy. But that was two people not connecting. Here we have two people connecting, very much so in the Question as well, and in Hellblazer as well. What I like about Ed Hannigan's art is that it's very simple, and I like Dick Giordano's inking as well. He's a great inker, very old, very professional. I just wanted to touch about what this is about. I think this is continued from the first one. And it's about a guy who killed 7 girls, a lot of girls, little girls, and he captured them, took them home, tortured them, and killed them. And one of them gets away. And this is the story about her. She's grown older. She wants to testify against him because she's gotten out of all this self-hate and all the feelings that's connected to being a victim. And that's what I wanted to drive at here. That what this is about, actually. And she connects with Dina, who is Black Canary, who went through a lot. And here's the two women talking about feelings, who went through a lot in the Longbow Hunter, or Hunters, can't remember, because she was captured and tortured. And they're talking about all the people saying at least she wasn't raped. But that's not the point, they say. The point is not that I wasn't raped. The point was that I was captured and tortured, and that I can't, for the rest of my life, connect with other people because I'm so scared. Every time a man touches me, I scream. And they talk about this in a comic book. Yeah. And you can say, you know, oh, it's they don't really go into it, you know, and that's not what the story is about, but it is what the story is about, and that's what's so beautiful because Mike Grell understands that um, Green Arrow is the hero of the comic book, but in this one, he's sort of just in the background, and it's the women talking about the tragedy of what happened and being a victim and being a survivor, I guess, and not like I'm gonna get some hate from this, but not like, you know, oh, a man once slapped my butt, but I'm a survivor now. You know, a lot of women has, you know, not a lot, but a few women has has tapped my butt, and I know I'm a man and I can defend myself and all that, and uh, a lot of shit has happened to me in my life. I lived on the streets. I moved away from home when I was 15 or 16. I can't remember. Um, I'm not a survivor, you know. I But if you were captured by a serial killer and you got away, then you're a survivor, right? If someone tried to murder you, you're a survivor. Um, and that's what they're talking about. They're talking about, and it can be a big thing and a small thing. You know, it doesn't need to be like a big thing. Um, and that's what they're talking about. And look at this. This is Dina trying to, or expressing her feelings in a panel. And I think that's a lot of Dick Giordano there. It might be at Henneken, but it's a lot of feelings in one panel. And I love that. I love that about the book, that it's so simple. And yet, in the simplicity, which is the hardest thing to achieve, is to achieve a lot with simplicity. Um, I wanted to show that Green Arrow is not the good guy anymore. You know, he doesn't capture people and put them in prison. He just leaves them to die. He's not playing around. And that's what I like about this as well, is that Mike Grell understands the character, keeps the character that we all know and love, but he also matures him. You know, he goes, well, he was through this traumatic experience with the woman that he loves, and now he's not playing games anymore. Um, this is not for kids. You see also at the end, the woman is standing on a bridge. Also a very Green Arrow moment. I'm stressing now because the Mason is here, but she's standing on the bridge wanting, you know, thinking about throwing herself off. And sometimes when you've been through traumatic things in life, um, the thinking of the suicide can actually help you move on. It sounds really stupid, but it's really complicated. It's really hard that you wanting to kill yourself can actually. Well, there is of course the danger that you actually go through with it, but it's having a traumatic experience. Um, Suicide is an option. You know, it's a way out of the trauma, of the hurt, of the pain. And what Oliver is saying in the end, because he's still Oliver, and that's so beautiful, is that he's reaching out. You know, he just left the guy to die, but he's still the leftist Oliver, saying, you know, healing comes with, you know, building bridges, and the humankind's are the scariest of all. And how does it end? Fucking holding hands. Could it be more Oliver Queen? No. It's beautiful. It starts with him shooting a guy with an arrow in the heart, and it ends with him connecting with the victim, holding her hand. And that's what this issue is about. It's about him hunting a serial killer. I want to show you. absolutely amazing Ed Hannigan image here. That's just beautiful. That's haunting and beautiful and wow. So props to Ed Hannigan and Giordano and Mike Grell for daring and for building an issue about a superhero who's hunting a serial killer who murdered and tortured kids. Sort of a dark subject, but still, um, it being about the victims. And maybe I came off as saying, if you've been raped, you're not a victim or you're not a survivor. I don't care what you call yourself. Um, it's not what happened to you. It's about if you've been exposed to something traumatic, you need to be able to move on, and you do that by connecting, and that's the story of the issue. You know, that's the story of Green Arrow 1 and 2, especially number 2. It's amazing. Now this is the storytelling. The pace of the storytelling is not very good. This should have been in 3 issue series because it's just over way too fast, and you figure things out way too easy. And but it sort of feels like when I reread it that that's because it's not really about him figuring out who the killer is. It's about the 2 women talking about the trauma. Now you don't have to have been captured by a serial killer to be a survivor. You don't have to. I guess I was a little bit sour because all of a sudden, everybody was a survivor. If somebody at work said "great ass" and you you were a survivor, not for saying great ass, but being the recipient of the great ass comment, you know, the trauma level has sort of, the bar has been lowered. Um, that's not saying that something, I had a girlfriend once who had been raped or attempted raped. Actually, I've known a lot of girls who have been, well, that sounds weird now, who has been attempted raped. It just happens to a lot of girls, and of course, it's traumatic and it's scary as hell. It can be a guy. You're bicycling home at night, and a guy is running after you, trying to catch you, and you outrace him. But of course, you carry that with you. Um, I'm not saying you're crying yourself to sleep every night because of that, but you carry it inside. That's what I mean. And that's what this is about. It's about the trauma. And it's about, at least you weren't raped. Um, that's the key phrase in this issue. And I think that's very important to understand what Mike Grell is trying to do here. He's not saying it's unimportant what happened to you. He's saying it's very important. But people need to understand that there are underlying effects of trauma that we don't actually see, and it touches people in different ways because we're all different. We experience it different. We handle life different. We handle challenges in life different. Some people do not handle challenge very well. That's why I don't like politics, because I'm not with the left and I'm not with the right. I'm not saying, oh, we should just help everybody, because I think you have a responsibility as a human being to help yourself. But I also acknowledge that some people can't, and we need to help those people. Um, we need to do something for them. Um, yeah. The good thing about this whole Me Too movement that came out was that it sort of made us um, look at life different. The way, as I said, I've had several girlfriends where people have tried to rape them um, in varying degrees. The one girl was really raped, and that was a trauma. That was really hard for her. I was very young and I didn't really understand it. Um, but it happened, and it happened to a lot of girls. So that was the good part of the Me Too. The bad part of it was that all men was treated equal. We were all Nazis, basically. And this whole generalization is really frightening as well. But that's another topic for another day. All this from the Green Arrow, right? Who would have known the Green Arrow? If you haven't read this, I think you should. Buy the Longbow Hunters. There's only one hunter, right? Anyway, by Mike Grell. It's exceptional. The artwork, the storytelling, it's really, really good. And then buy this. This is like $1 or $2. Nobody, I don't know. Forget about the key issues. Forget about all that crap. Buy it to read it. Buy it to experience it. I would suggest buying this and The Question, but I'll get back to The Question. The Question is also very good on a different level, because Dennis O'Neil is a better writer than Mike Grell, but Mike Grell owns this character, and if you want to see how to to take a character and change it, but be true to everything that they are, and like he doesn't go, oh, I'm this character now, so my past doesn't matter. He still refers to his past, but he's very much in the moment. So he's not saying I was once goofy and that doesn't matter. No, he acknowledged that, but he changes, but not into a different person. And I think that's what most modern writers don't really understand, is that you need to change, but you need to change it into something that exists. You need to change it based on what's gone on before. And you need to understand that you're only here for a short while. You'll die, but this guy will live on forever. I've tried to read Kevin Smith's Green Arrow, and I couldn't get through it. Like, having read Mike Grell's Green Arrow, it's hard to read anything else, I would say. And again, because it wasn't about Green Arrow. It was about the characters around him. It was about the victims that he confronted, that he met, that he tried to save. Yeah, he's trying to save the Earth as well, because Green Arrow is Green Arrow, but not like battling Darkseid. No, it's an oil company in Alaska that spilled oil, but that's because he is the character that he is, so he needs to do that. He needs to do that if you want to write Green Arrow. But what Mike Grell did was that he made him left and right? He kills people. He just straight out kills people. And but he also have the whole humanity, softness going on. So he's complicated. He's a human being. That's what we like. That's what I like to read about. I like the silliness of the Silver Age, but it's not very interesting to read. It's the Bronze Age that changes the characters into something from a one-dimensional almost into two-dimensional characters, and then late 80s for DC's purpose, they become three-dimensional. I think Marvel did something called Max, but that was just, it was just more violence. They didn't understand that the violence is just a part of it, It's not the essence of it. the essence of this is the humanity. It's the understanding of characters. It's understanding humans. Because that's what you want to read. You want to read stories about humans. You want to be able to relate. You can't relate to Frank Castle shooting up more people. You can relate to the sadness inside of him. And that's why the Dolph Lundgren Punisher movie, Dolph Lundgren, he's Swedish. That's why it had moments where he was sitting in a sewer or something like that. Sort of stupid, but he was reflecting on life. And he was trying to deal with all the chaos inside of him. And that part of it really worked for me. Him going out, being cheesy, not so much. That's why the Punisher works. It's when you deal with the humanity of the Punisher. When you deal with the humanity of Green Arrow, it works. That's the Question, Green Arrow, John Constantine. They're all down to earth characters, And I think that's why we can relate better to them as human beings when they're written as such. And when they're drawn as such. The colors here are very, very much. I would actually love to see this in black and white. I think it would be much more powerful in black and white. But Ed Hannigan's and Giordano's artwork. I haven't read this. Dick is writing about here. Meanwhile, actually, Stephen Colbert stole that. They should sue him. It's just an amazing ensemble of people, and Janet Kahn and Karen Bircher making all this possible, paving the way. Not because they were heroes to me when I was a kid, and back then, not because they were women. I don't care about that. I don't think we should focus on that, on them being women, because they were heroes because they understood their job. Basically, they were very, very good at their job. They understood that you take talent and you point it in the right direction and you let it do its job. Probably nudge it from time to time. They weren't starstruck, but they were very much hands-on, and they were very much leave it alone. But that's another story. About these two exceptional editor-in-chief and editor. Karen Bircher did the Vertigo label, and Janet Kahn came in and ran DC for quite a number of years. And she took the company and lifted it up. She made it something unique, and they took a lot of chances in her time, and they did very well. It doesn't always pan out when you take a chance, but sometimes it does. So I would very much recommend reading this Green Arrow. Beautiful cover by Mike Grell. The blood, the water, the moon, the hunter, but also the art inside by Ed Hannigan and Dick Giordano. I just love that panel because it's so much about her fear and her passion. It's everything she dealt with being a prisoner in one panel. It's an amazing. Also, the action is very good. I'll just show you some action panels. No words, just. I think that's great. Yeah, so Grell, Hennigan, and Giordano. Green Arrow. Um, I think Mike Grell did 80 issues, something like 82, 80, 80 or 82, 83. Um, it was good. When the new writer took over, it just instantly turned to shit. Um, Sorry, new writer. Can't remember your name. But this is amazing. Give it a try. That's it for now. Cheers. Bye.